how to win every minute. I got this topic from hearing the story of football coach Nick Saban. He's now a retired football coach, but famously coached the University of Alabama for many years and won several championships. And there was a story from before he was actually coaching at Alabama. He had coached at a few other places, and I don't remember or even recall what team he was coaching when this particular story happened. But his team was set to play a very highly ranked team that was ranked a lot higher than his current team was at that time. And Nick Saban told his team a day before the game, don't even go out there and try to win the game tomorrow, but instead just focus on winning every moment that you're on the field. So every play that you play, just make sure you do the best job you can possibly do on that particular play. If every man on the team, to a man, does that, then we'll put ourselves in a position to win the game. But we're not even going to focus on winning as the goal. We're just going to focus on executing as best we can as the goal. And then what ends up happening is his team ends up doing exactly what he asked them to do, and they won the game. And this kind of became the groundwork for what Nick Saban became famous for, which is just focusing on the process with his teams and his players, being that he has very good players and everybody executing at their highest possible level consistently usually led to a formula of winning games and winning championships. So instead of focusing on the big picture goal of winning the game, let's just focus on the process or the system that is going to get us to win the game. And then we'll end up winning the game anyway, just by focusing on what the process is. And everybody committed to that. And again, this is what created success for them. And Nick Saban was often credited with having a system that literally was called the process, because that's what he got his players to commit to, just making sure they did the best they could every single minute of every day. And today, what we're going to talk about is how you can win every minute yourself with everything that you do. So let's get into it. Point number one. Today's topic, once again, is how to win every minute. Number one, first step is mindfulness of your behavior. All right, this is the same thing that Nick Saban probably did with his football players and his teams when he was coaching. I didn't play football, nor did I play for Nick Saban, but anybody who did can probably verify what I'm telling you right here, that you have to be mindful of what you are doing so that you can ask yourself and consciously check yourself if you find yourself not doing what you're supposed to do, or once you just ask yourself, am I doing the best that I could possibly do right now? If the answer is no, then you can make changes. But if you don't ask, then you can't fix it. So you got to be aware of things in order to fix them. 85% of what we do, say, and think, ladies and gentlemen, happens unconsciously and involuntarily without us even realizing that we're doing it. So if we want to change our behaviors, the most important thing we must do is identify our unconscious habits that are running our behavior patterns. So when we become aware of things that we're not consciously aware of normally, then we can do something about those things. But if we're not aware, then we can't do anything about it. Does everybody agree? If you don't know about something, you can't do anything. Remember, I had on back in the days when I was doing my basketball material online, and I would do a lot of influencer events. I remember I was at one event with a couple of fellow influencers, and I had on a pair of LeBron sneakers. Don't ask me which ones they were. It was a LeBron Soldier, Zoom Soldier, something like that I had on. And one of the influencers that I was doing the event with, he looked at the shoes that I had on, and he was like, man, I don't even have those. And I'm telling you that to tell you this, not to brag to you that I had a pair of LeBron sneakers, but that since he was not aware of, or maybe he didn't even know the shoes were out. I can't remember which one he said, but if you don't know the shoes are out, you can't buy them, right? Now, if you know they're out and you don't buy them, that's the conscious choice. But if you don't know they're out, you can't do anything about them. So the point being, folks, you got to be aware of what you are doing unconsciously in order for you to consciously change it. And being that I just told you, 85% of what you do is done unconsciously, you have to make the unconscious conscious so you can examine it and make any necessary adjustments. Everybody follow what I'm saying here? So this is mindfulness of your behavior. If you want to change our behaviors, the most important thing is not changing what we are consciously telling ourselves to do, but changing what we're normally doing unconsciously and not even seeing that is happening. So if we don't become aware, again, we can only make surface level changes, which is the stuff that we do consciously, which only controls 15%. Is the 85% that makes all the difference. And that's the part that we need to address, but it's much harder to address because we don't normally see it when it's happening. So mindfulness of your behavior can simply mean asking yourself a question. What am I thinking about right now? What's going through my head right now? What am I actually doing right now? I mean, just asking yourself the question, what am I doing, might wake you up out of your stupor if you're doing something that you probably shouldn't be doing. You could ask yourself something like, hey, is what I'm doing right now helping or hurting me when it comes to the goals that I have? Is what I'm doing right now aligned with my goal for the day? Is my current behavior helping me win the day, or is it helping me lose the day? These are all really good questions. And these are black and white, yes or no questions. You can ask open-ended questions as well. A couple of these are open-ended, a couple of them are black and white. But consciously asking yourself these questions will make you more aware of your habitual behavior patterns that you otherwise would not notice, because again, by definition, they are unconscious. You don't even know that they're happening, yet you are doing them all the time. So when you're aware of everything that you're doing, you have the opportunity to change anything that you're doing. But when you're only aware of 15% of what you're doing, then you're only eligible to change 15%. And if you only change 15% of what you're doing, what's the chances that you're going to make a wholesale difference in your life? Very small. Well, your chances are 15%. Moving on, point number 2. Today's topic, again, is how to win every minute. Number 2, a plan as a baseline to hold you accountable. So just like I told you that story with football coach Nick Saban, the plan is the baseline to hold you accountable. So if the coach says, okay, here's the process of what we're going to do every day. He has a list of, let's say the football coach has a list of 27 principles that every player must follow. And one of the principles could be something one of my college coaches said is that when you go to class, you got to sit in one of the first 3 rows of every classroom. So don't be sitting in the back of the room. You got to sit in one of the first 3 rows of every classroom. That's one of the principles. Another one is whenever we have practice, make sure you're here 15 minutes before practice starts and make sure you have your uniform on and your shoes are tied. That's another principle. Or he would say if we have a road game and we have to catch the bus, make sure everybody's on the bus like 15 minutes before the bus is supposed to leave. That's another principle. Or he would say the minimum GPA to be eligible is a 1.8. I'm going to set the minimum GPA at a 2.0. So if you don't have a 2.0, you are ineligible according to my rules, not according to the NCAA's rules. So those are a couple things. But let's say a football coach has 27 of those things that they lay out. Like, hey, you have to hit the weight room at least this many times a week. You got to be under this amount of body fat. You got to be able to run up and down the field, full football field, all the way down, all the way back within this many seconds, depending on what position you play. They can lay out all these plans, which are the baselines for how everybody has to perform, with the idea that if everyone follows this system and adheres to these plans, and then we go out and play, we're going to win most of our games. All right, so that's how a system can support a goal. So any of you ever heard people, the ongoing, I guess if you want to call it, debate about systems and goals? I've talked about this. Let me find the episode where I talked about systems and goals and how they actually work together. That was episode number 2525, how systems and goals work together. When you have these, again, the plan is the system, and the goal is, of course, the outcome that you want to achieve, and they work together. So you use the system as a baseline to hold you accountable. As long as we're following the system, is this part of the system? Is part of the system showing up 10 minutes before practice, or is the system 15 minutes before practice? Is it yes or no? So it holds everybody accountable. So in college, for example, again, another example, one of the coaches that I played for, he would script out his plans for every practice. All right, so every practice, I don't know what was on that list. Well, I kind of do know because it would be the thing that he would have us doing, but he would have this little piece of paper folded up in his pocket or a 3x5 card. And every time he blew the whistle and told us to get on the baseline, he would pull out the little piece of paper and he would look at it. He would check off what we just did, and then he would see the next thing and he would say, all right, now everybody go over here and we're going to do this. He already had it scripted out exactly what we're going to do. Every single minute of the practice was already planned out. Going to get water was planned out. Making us do sprints was planned out. If he had to stop and talk, maybe sometimes that was planned out, maybe not. But the point is, he scripted out most of what we were going to do, and the plan was designed for him to hold himself accountable. And by holding himself accountable and telling us what to do, this was his vision of, here's the system I'm going to use to get my team ready to play in the games. Now, again, just because you have a system doesn't necessarily mean you're going to reach the goal. Maybe your system is not going to work, but at least you have one. You can always adjust your system. Same way you can adjust a plan. Now, again, he never announced like, hey, I got every minute of practice scripted out. I don't think he ever announced it, but it was obvious because you could see him pulling a little paper out every time he was telling us what to do. And he would often refer to it when he was telling us the next thing. He'd be literally looking at the paper like, all right, next thing is go over here. Now, I've also heard many coaches, especially these days, this has probably become much more of a normal practice. I know I have a lot of sport coaches who listen to the show. I would bet that many of you do this as just a normal thing, is that you script out every minute of your practice. And usually these days, I think it's a really normal thing that sports teams film every minute of every practice. So you actually watch practice film. Back in the days, we barely had game film, let alone practice film. But nowadays, I think most coaches who are listening to this, especially at the collegiate level, I think almost all of you film like every minute of practice. So you can even analyze practice. As a matter of fact, it would have been a good thing had we had film of practice. Back in the days, I probably would have been a better practice player knowing that I was being caught on film if I was ever loafing off in practice, because I did get called out for a few times in my collegiate career. So coaches these days, again, usually script out every minute. You got everything filmed, so you can go back and look at everything. And usually these things don't become news items unless the team is successful or the coach is successful. So by deductive reasoning, what you should take from this is the following. Successful people usually operate from a plan or a script for the success that they continue to create or that they wish to create. So if you're a successful person already, you probably have a plan or a script or a system through which you create your success, whether you're consciously aware of it or not. And if you want to be a successful person, or you want to be successful in some area of life in which you are not currently successful or not yet successful, what you need to do is come up with a plan or a process that will get you to that success, at least by the best of your knowledge. As a matter of fact, it doesn't have to be by the best of your knowledge. It could be by the best of somebody else's knowledge. Go find someone who already does have success in that area and follow what they do. So if I was trying to be a coach, for example, in sports right now, let's say a college coach, I would go talk to some other college coaches and find out what they're doing to have a successful career or a successful program. And I would take pieces from everything I get from all the people I talk to. And I would say, okay, well, here's an amalgamation of all I got. I'm going to put a bunch of these to use because this one came up. Every person I talked to all said this thing. I'm probably going to do that thing because it seems like it's working for people. So it doesn't have to be just your knowledge that you get out of your own head. It can be knowledge that you borrow from others who have already done the thing that you want to do, which is, by the way, shortcut to success in anything you do in life is to just tap into people who've already created that success. So you don't have to reinvent the wheel, or you don't have to build the wheel out of nowhere, which is what many people try to do, which is the slow plan to success. Not to mention all the trial and error you'll have to go through in that process. So successful people have a plan for the success that they want to create, then they just follow their own plan. Simple as that. One of my favorite books that I read over the last couple of years is called No BS Time Management for Entrepreneurs, written by a guy by the name of Dan Kennedy. And Dan Kennedy espouses the concept of having a plan or a script for your entire day. That's what he says. He says script out the whole day. Some people call it a schedule. He calls it a script. And he even talks about scripting out weeks, months, or even an entire year ahead of time. He literally says that he would plan out his whole year. So he knew which days of the week he was going to do his calls. He didn't know who would be on the calls, but he knew which days the calls were happening. And he would block off the time for the calls. And if you came into his program and you were one of the people on one of those calls, the calls are going to be on this day this month, this day that month, this day this month, and here's your 20-minute window when you get to have a call. He would have all of that laid out. And on January 1st, he had it laid out what he'd be doing in October. And that's a script. You can't argue with that one. That's a script. He would plan out the whole year ahead of time. He'd plan out his vacations. He'd plan out his trips. And this guy obviously lived by a very, I guess you can call it militant idea around time. So it makes sense that he wrote a book around time management for entrepreneurs. And I think he has enough authority based on just that information alone that you might want to see what this guy has to say, even if you don't follow everything that he does. Again, you may not go that far, but you can at least have a plan or a script for every activity you are involved in. If you don't script out the year, you can at least script out the day. You can at least do that, right? So if you go to the gym, do you have a plan on what you're going to do when you get there? I find that when I go to the gym, and I've been going to gyms for a long time, when I go to a gym, usually I'm going on the same days at the same times consistently. So I start to see the same people. And the people who I see at the gym all the time, like the same faces that I see all the time, to the point that even if I never actually have a conversation with them, I almost kind of know them because we see each other all the time in the facility. They all seem to have a plan for what they're doing. They know exactly what they're doing when they get to the gym. They know where they're going to start. They know what they're going to work on. They know what machines they're going to use. If someone's using that one, they'll use this one. They know exactly what they're going to do. I know they're never just wandering around the gym trying to figure out what to do. Now, the people who I see in there randomly, like I've never seen them before, and now here they go showing up, and then it's been like 3 weeks, and here they go showing up again. Those people tend to not really have a plan. They're just kind of vagabonding around the gym trying to figure out what to do. All right. When you do something consistently, usually it's because you have a plan. And because you have a plan, you'll do a thing consistently. They feed off of each other. If you were writing a book, for example, do you have a plan for how you're going to get the book completed? Like, I'm going to take this much time to get this much done, this much time for this much, or are you just going to sit down and do it all at once? What's your plan for getting it finished? See, what the plan does, folks, is that it holds you accountable and allows you to measure your progress against it so you know where you stand. One challenge I notice with many humans is that they are constantly working but don't have a way of measuring their progress because they have not created a plan or a system to measure their progress against. In other words, you're creating your thing, but you don't know how long it's supposed to take to create the thing because you never made a plan for how long it was going to take. So you could say, I'm going to make a course, and it takes you as long as it takes you to make the course. I suggest that you don't do things and let it take as long as it takes. A lot of people tend to go by this formula. I don't agree with this formula. I'm not a fan of this formula of it takes as long as it takes. Why? Because Parkinson's law says things will take as long as you give it time to take. So if you give something unlimited time, guess how long it'll take? It'll go on forever and you'll never finish it. If instead you say, I have this much time to get this done, and you can calculate why it should be that. Again, read that Dan Kennedy book that I just mentioned, No BS Time Management for Entrepreneurs. He has a good formula for this. If you say, I give myself 8 weeks to get this course done, and it's going to be an 8-module course, and that means each week you should have at least one new module done. So at week 6, you should have at least 6 modules of your course done. Now, if you happen to have 7 done, great. You just bought yourself an extra week of time because you planned this. So you see how that can kind of keep you on point rather than you just randomly doing stuff and hoping that it works out for the best and hoping that you have some time left when you finally get done all the stuff you said you were going to get done, which is the way most people operate. So many people are constantly working, but they don't have a way of measuring their progress because, again, they don't have a plan. So the plan solves that problem. It gives you something to measure against, and it holds you and your efforts accountable with respect to the schedule or respect to the time. Point number 3. Today's topic, once again, is how to win every minute. Number 3, emphasis on process over outcome. We've already touched on this a few times already here in this episode. Process over outcome means you just know what the process is that you want to follow. Then you get clear on what the outcome is going to be. And again, you don't have to focus on the outcome anymore because your process is all based on achieving the outcome. So all you do is follow your process and then, okay, where are we at with regards to the outcome? And if you're there, then good, just keep following this process. If you're not, is there something that went wrong out of your control, or is there something in your process that just didn't calculate? It just wasn't, calibrated in such a way that following this process is going to get me to the outcome. So if I say my process is I'm going to be able to bench press 300 pounds by 6 months from now, and I follow my own process, and when I get there, I'm only bench pressing 250 pounds, well, maybe there was something off in my process. Maybe my process just didn't factor everything in the way I thought it would. I didn't progress as quickly as I would. Maybe I had an injury in the process. Maybe I got sick and I missed a couple weeks in the gym. What happened here that caused my process to not produce the outcome? So your process should all be based on having respect for achieving the outcome, and you should have some reasonable reason to believe that your process will lead to the outcome. And the best way to have that reasonable reason to believe it is that you got your process from someone who already knows how to achieve the outcome, not just your random guessing. Speaking of what we talked about in point number 2, when your plan is clear, then your goal is to focus on the process. So the goal is to operate the system. So you see that, how systems and goals work together? The goal is to operate the system. So I was talking to a guy who runs a sales company, runs an insurance company. He was telling me that he has a big team. And he was telling me that all I need my agents to do is to make sure that they're closing 40 deals a month. If you close 40 deals a month and everybody on my team closes 40 deals a month, we'll be doing excellent. We'll be doing perfect. And all people had to do is follow the process that we have laid out. He has a whole process and a system on his team for what they need to do in order to hit this. We just need everybody to follow the damn process. And one of the problems, challenges, one of the reasons he's talking to me is that people on my team don't always follow the damn process. So he wanted someone like me, a fresh voice. It's not like everything, it is that I'm saying some things that he hasn't said, but it's not like I'm coming with a whole completely new thing. It's just that sometimes people need to hear some things a little bit differently from a different voice in order to get the point. And that applies to all human beings. The point here that I'm making here is that when the process is clearly laid out by someone who already knows how to achieve the goal, all you got to do is follow that shortcut. So again, I told you episode 25, systems versus goals. They work together. They are not opposed to each other. It's not like you got to pick one or the other. They actually work together. Following the system gets you to the goal. So a football coach can have a deconstructed system that leads to winning a championship because they already know how to win a championship. Maybe they were an assistant coach on a team that won a championship. Maybe they worked at the feet of someone who did win a championship, so they know what it takes. And if everybody follows that system, assuming you have the right ingredients, the more often than not, that team will end up with the championship, as long as people follow the system. Usually people end up not reaching their goal, not because there was something wrong with the system, but simply because people could not adhere to the system. There's a gem in that sentence that I just said. I'm going to break it down and pull it out for you. Many times, let me say the point again. Many times people don't reach a goal, not because there was anything wrong with their system, but simply because they didn't follow their own system. And sometimes the system requires things of you that you are simply not willing to do. Are you willing to get up early every day? Are you willing to hold yourself accountable to getting this much work done within this much time frame on a consistent basis? Are you willing to execute every single time as the system says you have to? And see, when people may say they're willing to do it, but are you actually doing it? When people start skimping on what the process requires, therefore you're not following the process, and then you don't get the outcome. Don't blame the process, blame yourself, because you're the one who didn't do the work. See, that's the goal. That's the key right there. Not the goal, but the key. The key is you just have to operate the system. When you have operated your full system and still not gotten the outcome, then the problem is we got to fix the system. We got to fix the process. But what I find most of the time, and I talk to a lot of people, men, women, young, old, business professionals, freelancers, contractors, entrepreneurs, and male, female, I'm telling you this is with 100% certainty. Most of the time, the people I talk to know what they're supposed to be doing. They are simply not doing it. And this is why accountability is the fourth pillar of what we do in Work on Your Game University. Mindset, strategy, systems, accountability. Accountability is about you actually doing what you're supposed to be doing, following your script. Many people write scripts and don't follow them. And then they say, well, I didn't get the outcome. Well, did you follow your script? Oh, the cake didn't come out right. Did you follow the recipe? Okay, so this is the question you got to ask. So you can apply this with anything that you do. The good news about this is that you don't have to figure these things out on your own, as I've already told you. You can tap into the process that is already been deconstructed. All you got to do is follow it. All right, and there's no aspect of life in which that's not true. There's no aspect of life in which that is not true. So with all that said, let's recap today's class, which is how to win every single minute. Again, I told you I got this story that I heard passed down. Football coach Nick Saban just told his team that wasn't that good, hey, if we just win every minute of this game against this other really good team, let's just see what happens. Let's just make sure we win every minute of the game. Don't even worry about winning the game. And they ended up winning the game. And he built the whole process around that very concept. So number one, be mindful of your behavior. Just catch yourself consciously on what you normally do unconsciously and ask yourself, is this getting me where I want to go? And you can ask yourself many different versions of that same question. Point number two, have a plan as a baseline to hold you accountable. When you have a system or a process to follow, you can use that to hold you accountable to make sure you know what you're supposed to be doing every single minute of the day. You don't have to guess. And point number three, emphasis on process over outcome. All right, systems and goals are not diametrically opposed. They actually work together. You create a system that is designed to help you reach the goal, and all your plan becomes, all your goal becomes, is to operate the system. As long as the system is reasonably designed to help you reach the goal, the only reason you won't reach the goal or get really, really close to it is if someone fails to execute the system. And in my experience, working with human beings, most of the time is that people fail to execute their own system. There's nothing wrong with the system. The problem is the execution not done by the human being responsible. All that said, make sure you go to workonyourgameuniversity.com so you can work with me directly, have me as your direct coach so we can get to work, get things done, and get you winning not only every minute, but also every hour, day, week, month, year, and lifetime. That's workonyourgameuniversity.com. Work on your game. Dre, all